Change the diaper.
That's what they have nurses.
There you go. You just want to bring him up here, and you can take all these.
What changed in the second half?
I think our change really started probably middle to second quarter more than in the second half. I just played more consistent. We tackled a little bit better. We tackled poorly early in that game. Had a lot of missed assignments early in that game. Settled down in the second half. Made a couple plays, put them in some third down and long situations, which are always good for from a defensive point of view. I don't know if I've ever had a game like that. I think Stroh pointed out that was most yards that anybody's ever given up in the first half of a game. But for me, it's like that's the most yards I've ever given up in the first half of a game, and it's probably the least yards I've ever given up in a second half of a game. Really hard to put a finger on. But I tell you what is the way that game went, I was really proud of the way our guys hung in. I mean, we've all seen games like that start that way, to keep rolling up on you, and our guys were determined not to let that happen again this week, and I was proud of them for that.
Without giving away, I guess, too much, what did you do, after Malcolm talked to you and everything, and after that long run by Barkley?
Yeah, the biggest thing we were just having, we had so many new guys on the field, and we were having some issues with communication and execution. And we just simplified some things. They were trying to use, not hurry up tempo like you would think, like no huddle, but they were trying to get out of the huddle and snap the ball quick and things like that. And like I said, we had some new guys, and we had a lot of different layers to a lot of our calls, but we sort of eliminated those, and it worked out pretty well for us.
It seems a few more teams are doing that, racing out of the huddle up to, is that?
Yeah, I think that's a trend.
Before,
That's a trend across the league.
Rams are doing it.
Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen it from a lot of different. There's a lot of different ways to tempo. I mean, you guys know my baseball analogies. There's sometimes the tempo, like what used to be known as tempo, just fastball, just on the ball, going as fast as you can every single snap. A little bit like a pitcher that's throwing 100 miles an hour every single time. After a while, you get used to it. It's hard to hit, but after a while, you get used to it, and you can take your swings. It's probably the hardest when teams are throwing different change of pace, so to speak. Sometimes bursting out of a huddle going fast, sometimes going slow, sometimes double cadence, sometimes going fast. I think that's legit to say that it's something that's popping up across the league.
Hey, Jim, with Malcolm, I think last year one of the silver linings of Jordan going down was moving him all over the defense. Sort of out of necessity, you had to do that again against the Giants. Does that, I don't know, get him more focused? Does that get him more into the game?
I don't think he's into the game regardless of where he plays. He did move around, but then we had injuries in the game that took us out of our dime package through most of the second half also. So he played some different positions early, but then late he played a significant amount of his snaps at the safety position. Or I actually played at the nickel, in the nickel slot, because it took us out. He had to move down because it took us out of our dime. He's a good all-around player. I don't know that we could have won that game without having a guy like Malcolm Jenkins. Number one, that has the flexibility to move to different positions. But number two, the athletic ability to do it. It's easier said than done. It's not just knowing what to do. But we were corner challenged. I mean, that's pretty well documented. And then we had an injury in the game, and he had to go in and get us through that. And not only got us through it, but we played at a high level with him in there. So he was certainly a key part of that turnaround from the beginning of the game to the end of the game.
When you journey first came back, how do you think he looked, and what do you think he brought to the defense?
Yeah, he brought us some energy. He only played about 20 snaps or so. Didn't want to tax him too much out there, but it was good having that rotation back. I think we were even more productive with some of the other guys in there. Haloti, I thought showed up a little bit better, and Fletch. Fletch played an outstanding game. It didn't show up maybe on the stat sheet the way that other people do, but probably the two biggest keys in that game were Fletch and Malcolm. And when you're faced with the adversity we were faced with, you always want to rely on your veteran, marquee players, and those two guys came through for us.
What do you think of Malcolm's comments last week about the demeanor of the How do you think the team responded to that?
I didn't see those. I like the way we responded this week. I mean, particularly, again, that game did not start the way anybody wanted it to start. And without good leadership, you don't get out of that. And I'm sure that had something to do, our leadership had something to do with being able to get out of that bad start.
What did you learn about those young guys, those young corners especially, who hadn't played much until Sunday?
We need to tackle better. I mean, that's what I mean. Everybody always talks about corners, and you see the big plays down the field, and you see coverage, and that shows up probably more on fans and media radar than anything else. But job number one defensively is being able to tackle, and I thought particularly early in that game we didn't do a very good job of tackling with our corners. And for us to be consistent, we're gonna have to get guys on the ground, and we need to do a better job at that.
What went through your head when Channing went down?
Yeah, we were challenged sort of the whole game. I mean, we just knew how it was going to take us out of some packages, and how Malcolm was going to have to move to the nickel. We had talked about all that before the game. So when that happens, it's more just, okay, this is what we talked about. We're going to have to, go here, 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 and it takes us out of this package and, puts us in this, and nothing really, everybody has injuries, and we just you have to have a plan for when they happen. Sometimes that plan is a challenging plan. Sometimes it's a little bit easier. Malcolm was able to help us through that because of his versatility.
The defensive line and how they picked up the slack in that game against the Giants, and what you expect from them kind of moving forward here?
Well, we blitzed exactly one time. Well, we had two, but one was really a poor execution and miscommunicated and everything else, and led to a long touchdown run. But other than that, in that game, we blitzed, brought 5 guys one time in that game, played true man-to-man one time in that game. And, I mean, it's different every single week, but we knew what we had. We knew what our challenges were, and if you're protecting your secondary like that, if you're trying to put fires out there, then the onus goes to another group, and it went to our D-line, and they were up for the challenge. A couple sacks that put guys in, or put the Giants in some long yardage situations. It helped our coverage out. They did a good job stopping the run. I can't say enough about how Fletch was not only playing at a high level, but he was playing with the kind of toughness and leadership that you expect from a guy like that, and that had a lot to do with our ability to come out on the winning side of that.
It seemed like Michael Bennett was pretty disruptive in the second half. Just what did you see from him, and how was he kind of fit in overall this year?
Yeah, he went out in the first half with an injury, and we didn't know we were going to get him back. We were prepared to play the rest of the game without him, and then he tried it back out there, and his sack, you block a defensive end on a tight end, that's plays you got to expect to, you got to expect your guy to make the play, and Mike got the sack backed up, got a big stop early in that third quarter. He's another guy, played with a lot of energy, and when the chips were down, he really got going for us. I mean, it was tough for him to come back in that game. He had to really tough it out, but that was sort of what the boat that everybody was in. And, his energy and his ability to go in there and make a play certainly had a lot to do with that. A tackle for a loss, a big sack. Tackle for a loss came from a defensive tackle position. So, certainly a big part of our ability to win that game.
You've seen a lot of Adrian Peterson You've seen a lot of Adrian Peterson in this past decade. What stands out about what he's doing at this point?
Yeah, he's still strong as can be. He's got great vision. He's one of those guys that even if you get a first hat on him, he still has enough to churn positive yards. He's become a really important part of Washington's offense, and he's just one of those guys that just sort of zone block it. He can get on one edge and power through guys. Some guys get older, they lose a little speed. I don't know if he has, but he hasn't lost any of the power that he's had in the past, and he certainly hasn't lost his vision. Those are the things that carry him.
Kumu and Nate got more snaps than normal with Jordan out, obviously, and then Nigel took on his responsibilities like he did last year. How do you think those 3 guys responded?
Yeah, Nigel was challenged also. he hurt himself on the first series of the game and was hindered the rest of the time. And he had to tough that game out too. I mean, that would have been an easy one for him to, take a step back and say, hey, can't go. But, he had a lot to do and playing different positions and things like that. I think those guys, those guys played a lot in our opener and have played different varying amounts of reps. But, we need them with Jordan down. And, until we get Jordan back, those guys are going to have to play for us. I think they can both play better for us.
Jim, you talk about cornerback challenged, obviously, but at least you had Chandon and Devontae for the offseason and training camp. Cre'von just got here, had to play inside, then go outside. How do you think he handled it?
Yeah, he came up with the plays when he needed. He's got some experience. He's played some nickel in the past. He played for a pretty good Chicago defense last year. He played nickel pretty much the whole season. So he does have a little bit of experience that mitigates not being with us in training camp, maybe as much. He's been with a couple different teams. I think he's been with 3 different teams. So concepts aren't new to him. It's just terminology. But the demeanor you want from a corner and toughness and just determination, scrappiness, being able to put a bad play behind him. He exhibited all those things. I mean, I think it's fairly safe to say that everybody in the stadium knew that they were going to Odell Beckham on 3rd down and 7, and he was up for the challenge.
Jim, have you ever been in a situation before where you had so many moving parts in the back end of a defense?
Yeah. I mean, I've referenced last week, it was a time in, I think, 2004, 2005, toward the end of the season. I think we had 2 guys that began the season at the spot that they were playing. It just happens. Usually it's a little bit later in the season. The good news is that there's a decent amount of guys that we're going to get back. I don't know when we're going to get them back, but we're going to get back. We have some season enders, Derek Barnett, Rodney McLeod, Darby. But then we have some other ones that, we'll get them back. So there is that, I don't say silver lining, but that, there is a little bit of, there's some light at the end of the tunnel. There's challenges every week. Every team is challenged in some way. Those happen to be ours, and we have to figure out a way to, to manage it. A lot of times that goes to your veteran players, your leaders, your marquee guys really step up and play well, and I think we saw that from our defensive line. We saw it from guys like Malcolm Jenkins, and that was able to help us get that win.
Have offenses been trying to attack you guys a little on the edges, like in the run game? Make the cornerbacks tackle?
No different than any other time in 3 years that I've been here. But I think our corners were probably a little bit more consistent in tackling last year and the year before, and that's something that is a big issue for us that we need to do better at to limit some of those edge runs. I mean, we've seen it a lot of times this year. But as far as attacking it, I don't know if it changes any much. I mean, you really can't do a whole lot about not blocking a guy. I mean, there's some scheme stuff, but if they're going to choose to say, okay, it's our running back against that corner, your corner needs to be able to step up to that challenge, and we certainly need to do the same thing.
How do you compare
Washington's offense with Colt running the show?
Yeah, same stuff. He's a veteran player. He's got good mobility. He knows their offense. They're not going to change anything they have. And he also has a little bit of ability to run some zone read stuff and stuff like that. They haven't shied away from running any of that. Everybody good? All right.